Hello, welcome to the Critical Elements e-course. I will give you a quick overview of the critical elements for resource and support facilitation teachers. These are critical elements designed to guide the special education teachers and administrators in understanding expectation for teaching in the self-contained resource classroom, as well as providing support to students with disabilities in the general education classroom. These critical elements are broken up into sections that cover curriculum, instruction, management, environment, communication, and documentation. The first section that I will cover is curriculum. One of the most important components of this section is for teachers to understand the general curriculum is what they are to follow. An easy way to access the general curriculum is logging on to Eduphoria and going to Forethought and clicking on the Scope and Sequence tab. You can navigate Forethought by clicking on the level in which you want to go to. So first you're going to log on to Eduphoria. Then once you log on, you're going to click on Forethought. Once you click on Forethought, then you will click on the Scope and Sequence tab. You can navigate Forethought by clicking on the level in which you want to go to. So you will look at elementary, middle, intermediate, and high school. Once you choose a level, then you will choose the subject area that you want to view. Once you choose a subject area, then you select the course name that you want to see. Then you will have access to all of the components of the course curriculum. You will be able to view all of the course documents for the given course that you are looking at. The scope and sequence and instructional calendar will be two important pieces of the course documents that special education teachers will need to have access to for the content area that they support and teach. It is important for special education teachers to know how to use these documents in order to support students with disabilities. The next important item is having the TEKS and language objective visible so that students know and understand what will be taught on any particular day. And so as you see on the screen, you have an example of a student expectation, and then you have the language objective that will follow. These are some examples of teachers posting what will be going on throughout the course of the day. Teachers must have a well thought out lesson plan that is aligned to what is being taught. Lesson plan options. Since we're developing standards-based goals and objectives, they should be also linked to the lessons teachers have drafting custom standards-based goal sheets in each content area to help them develop goals and objectives for students with disabilities. Standards-based goals should have a timeline, condition, behaviors, and a criteria. These are some tools that can be used in order to plan teachers' lessons throughout the course of the week. You have an instructional design tool where it's broken up into important pieces to allow the teacher to design their activities, group kids a certain way, and assess. So you have the objective, you have the pre-assessment that you're going to use, activities, grouping, assessment, quick check for understanding, then any students that may have accommodations and modifications are included in this. and personal support. Some students need support provided in the classroom, and so as special education teachers providing that support, they'll need to know who those students are. Other lesson plan tools would include the 5E models. Teachers could plan for engaging the students, helping them to explore the concepts, then allowing the teacher to be able to explain in more detail. Then the teacher will be able to elaborate, and then at the very end evaluate whether or not the students were able to understand what was going on in the lesson. Since we're developing standards-based goals and objectives, they should also be linked to the lesson. So teachers have been drafting custom standards-based goal sheets in each content area to help them plan and develop goals and objectives for students with disabilities. Standards-based goals should have a timeline, condition, behavior, and criteria. Like I stated earlier, these are critical components for a standards-based goal. You need to have the date. There should be conditions so that the teachers understand what tools are being used to help that student access the curriculum. There should be a criteria, and then also a behavior, verbs telling you within the goal exactly what needs to happen. This is an example of the goal sheet for ELA-R. At the top you see timeline. It gives you a couple of examples. Then it's basically a graphic organizer that lays out exactly how the teachers are going to draft their custom standards-based goals. So you have conditions, you have a modified area, an accommodated area, you have your verbs, and then at the very bottom of the sheet is the criteria that you would use in order to evaluate the goal. The next section that I will cover is instruction. Student activities should be varied. This is a picture of a classroom where you see students in different stations or centers or in groups. Example of student activities that are varied during the class period are group work, whole group, learning, student stations, and computer work. This is another example of a classroom. You see some students sitting in front watching, and then you have one kid that's actually manipulating or interacting with the technology. It's another picture of a group of students working in groups where they have manipulatives out in front of them. With the instructional design tool that I showed you earlier, this is a great guide in order to help you differentiate instruction. Instruction is varied depending on the level of the student. Teachers should plan by making sure they know facts about their student learners, understand the content by knowing what the students will learn, and allow student products showing student success. When you have a product that shows their success, this will enable the teachers to know how students will convey their learning in the process of instruction, which is how students will engage in the learning. Important factors to consider: instructional formats, adapting lectures, activity-based learning, group investigation, stations, cooperative learning structures, whole group, independent learning, research-based strategies, support facilitation, teaching models such as station teaching or team teaching. All are critical elements that fall under differentiated instruction. And once again, this instructional design tool allows you to differentiate, because once again you're allowing the students, or you know what the students are expected to learn. You're going to pre-assess them to kind of find out what's going on beforehand. You have your activities, how you're going to group, how you're going to check for understanding and assess, how will you accommodate and modify for the students that need modifications. And then also the last thing is that personal support that you build in. The next focus will be the Big 8 instructional strategies that we've been utilizing in the district for quite some time. Teachers should know the important strategies that work for their students and the strategies that their campus is focusing on. You should hopefully word walls will be visible, and then vocabulary words are visible throughout the classroom to ensure that students are learning the important words that go with the content or the course. So typically you have campuses that are working on some of these things, and so it's important for your special ed teachers to find out which one of these things the campus is utilizing, and then they also incorporate those same research-based literacy strategies. Here's an example of a word wall. Vocabulary words displayed. Important information displayed. So maybe whatever the concepts that are being learned, you continuously have examples, and you have the words used in order for the students to remember and understand the concepts being learned. The next section that we're going to talk about is management. The classroom rules and procedures are visible for all students to see, read, and understand. Pictures can also be used next to the words to help students remember what those words mean or what rules go along with the picture. Classroom management is very important. As you see in this picture, this particular classroom has the different types of things that need to get done, and then the different students who will be responsible for those items. Appropriate behavior should be reinforced. When students are behaving appropriately, it is reinforced by the teacher using CHAMPS. An example may be, I like the way Calandra is sitting quietly at her desk with her materials, ready to learn today. Student expectations should be understood, and all students should understand what they are expected to learn for that day. The next section is environment. Workstations and centers, these are where students can be able to use and rotate through during class, or the student's desk are arranged in a certain order based on the learning activity. It is important for student work to be displayed. This is the work that students complete and is displayed throughout the classroom in order to show how successful and how hard the students worked on a certain concept. And then classroom organization, the classroom being neat and orderly is very important so that everything is easy to find. The next session is communication. It is important that professional communication is used with colleagues when meeting and in speaking to colleagues. Teachers should use student-friendly language when talking with or to students. Language should be used in a way that students can understand. It is important for special education teachers to collaborate with general education teachers as often as possible. There should be planning time for the resource teacher to meet and plan with grade level teachers, and a system in place for communication between general education teachers and resource teachers. Special education teachers should regularly communicate with the para that they work with. The expectation is that the resource teacher and para will communicate regularly about student needs. All special education teachers should follow campus administrator directives. Special education teachers should utilize the special education specialist. For the elementary level, Calandra Salter and Karen Jordan will be your specialists. Middle school, Sherry Maston. Intermediate, Tammy Weber. And high school, Bobby McCain. Parent rapport is also maintained. Open lines of communication are maintained between parents and the resource teacher. The last section is documentation. Lesson plans should exist. Resource teachers to complete lesson plans weekly or bi-weekly. They can also collaborate with a general ed teacher to plan and make sure that their lessons flow, or make sure that the resource teacher's lessons are aligned with the curriculum and what's going on with the general education curriculum. Also, IEPs are accessible. When asked to view an IEP for a student on the caseload, it should be easily accessed and maintained. Confidentiality will be important with the IEP, and also making sure that you keep the IEPs in a safe place. Data should be collected and analyzed. Teachers should know how to collect and interpret student data to make good educational decisions for resource students or the students that they are supporting out in general education. It is important that we understand how to program, assess, and lesson plan for our students. Data collection methods can include parent communication logs, support facilitation logs, intervention logs, and tally sheets. Student work samples are also collected. Teachers should collect and maintain work sample folders for all students on their caseload. The last and most important thing for documentation is that teachers know how to access and navigate Exceed and complete all necessary paperwork for ARD meetings. In conclusion, these are the important items needed for teachers to be successful with instruction.